Good evening, everyone. Hope that everybody is doing well. Thank you once again for joining us. I just posted something on my story to invite everybody on over here, so that's why I'm 1 minute late. But I hope that you all are doing well. I am excited to talk to Dr. Jamal on tonight. It's going to be super dope as he discussed his platform within the healthcare field. And for those who might be interested in maybe becoming a doctor or working in the healthcare field and anything of that nature, tonight is your night. All right. I hope that y'all have been enjoying For Life Connects. The whole purpose of this is really to, number one, support other entrepreneurs and to also give you access to different opportunities and organizations of which you can support and learn from. And so I hope that you have been enjoying it. I know I have been enjoying hearing the reactions and the comments and hearing how some of you have even started supporting these businesses. And so that makes my heart well to hear you all responding so well. So thank you. Remember to share with folks and let them know that For Life is on tonight. We are live. So we're waiting for Jamal to get on in here, and then we're going to get started. Wait for him to get on in here. I just got to... Okay. Yep. Hope y'all are well. All right, there's Jamal. There he is.
Hey, Walter, how's it going?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Doing good, thank you.
That's good. Such an honor to have you on, man. I'm so grateful for your yes, as I told you earlier today, and for you setting aside some time for us to just discuss and learn more about what you do and the things that you offer and how you started and all that good stuff. And so pleasure is all mine to have you on tonight.
Oh yeah, Walter, for sure, man. And thank you so much for that invite. I really appreciate you just giving me this opportunity to do so.
Absolutely. Did y'all hear his voice and diction? I love the voice. It is so great. So great. All right, so thank y'all for joining us. We're going to go ahead and jump into it. Dr. Jamal, I'm going to open us up in prayer, and then we're going to jump into the conversation, all right? All right, so let's pray. Father God, in the name of Jesus the Christ, we come to you first of all to say thank you, Lord. We thank you for yet another day of life. We thank you for another day of opportunity. We thank you for you just being our solid rock and our foundation and our hope, our joy, and all the things that get us through life. You are that, and for that, Lord, we just say thank you. I thank you for Dr. Jamal being on here tonight and for him representing the Washington Wellness Podcast and all that he does. I thank you for him being open vessel tonight to share and to give insight and inspiration to those who may be thinking about entering into the healthcare field and those who just are interested in starting a business or starting a podcast and what it takes to do those things. And so, Lord, I just pray that you will be in the midst of this conversation. Have your way. I pray that we will encourage, inspire, equip, and ignite anyone who is on this call, on this live, or that will watch it later. So, Lord, we just thank you in advance for what you shall do. In Jesus the Christ's name we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, how are you, man? You doing all right?
Doing good. I'm trying to switch over to my...
Let's see. You trying to switch over to something.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, can you... All right, cool. Yeah, I just had to put my AirPods in. I'm doing great. Yeah. Just really kind of feeling good about where kind of things are going in life, excited for, what's coming down the pipe and just, taking it one day at a time. Yeah, how are you?
Absolutely. I am well, man. It has been a day for me, but I am good. I'm excited to converse with you tonight and to see where this goes because I'm excited for what you have to share and how you will inspire other people. All right. All right. So
Yeah,
I'm just gonna jump in.
hopefully I don't disappoint.
Oh, you're not. You're not. No, you're not. There's no way, Dr. Jamal. You know you can't. But we're gonna go ahead and dive into my first question for you, which is who is Dr. Jamal Jones? Like who are you? Why do I always call you Jones? That is not your last name.
Oh, no, you're
Oh
fine,
my
man. You're
God.
fine.
Dr. Jamal, who are you? And share a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, for sure. So it's interesting. It's pretty rare that I introduce myself as doctor. I do it on occasion, but usually it's kind of someone that I know or who does it kind of for me, which is always interesting. But me, so I'm a PG County native, kind of born and raised in this area. Been here all my life, with the exception of going to grad school. I went to Langston University in Oklahoma. And that's where I got my doctorate of physical therapy program, doctor of physical therapy degree, excuse me. Did 3 years out there, and then decided that that area was kind of nice, but I really missed being from the DMV. There's no place like home, so
No.
came back and kind of got right into it. But yeah, so that's what I do from like a professional side. Pre-COVID and slowly kind of getting back to these kind of things as the world started to open back up. Just going out to different live music events, brunches, kind of high at the top of my list there, and
Hmm.
sporting events too. So I'm pretty happy with how the Wizards are doing this season.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, give me a little bit more information about your journey to becoming a doctor. Like, what was that process? How did you know that you wanted to become a doctor and all of that?
Yeah, for sure. So, I will see it's a little frozen on my side. Is it frozen on yours? All right, there we go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
so the
good now.
process, I appreciate it. The process, pretty much started in undergrad for me. I went to the University of Maryland, College Park. While there, I was a kinesiology major, kind of the same thing as like exercise science for the most part. And I wasn't really too sure, what I wanted to do kind of afterwards, like around like my sophomore year. Um, but then that's kind of when the professors were telling us, if you wanted to go on and continue to further yourself and do something, you probably needed advanced education for that. So it happened to be kind of one of my teaching assistants there. He was a physical therapist, kind of back in school getting a graduate degree. And then he was just, always telling us, during breaks or like, after class about how he really enjoyed what he was doing. All right, physical therapy sounds kind of cool. Let me look into it. So that's really what kind of started it. And then from there, I just feel like I was kind of pushed kind of down that path by all these different things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I had my own injury, which I had to go to physical therapy, and I was a physical therapy patient, and I kind of got to see it firsthand. And so I knew, I didn't want to sit down all day doing like a desk job or anything like that. I wanted to be active, I wanted to be moving, and then help people kind of get back to the things they enjoy doing. So that kind of helped lead me down that path as well. And then, I took that jump to go out to Oklahoma. It's a great program. The one thing that really attracted me that was like the small class sizes. So I had went from Maryland where I had like 400 people in the class,
Wow.
going to my doctorate program where it was only 14 of us in the class, right?
Mhm.
So it was a lot more intimate. We got to kind of know each other better. We kind of really relied on each other a lot more. And I just found that in a smaller class size, I really kind of performed better. And by the end of that, interview when I went out there for that, I was laughing, joking around, kind of with the deans and the professors. And so even though I didn't know anybody in the state, not a single soul, it kind of felt like, a place where I could go and thrive and do well at.
Nice, nice. I like the part where you said that it was your injury that really made you interested in pursuing that. You know what I'm saying? You already had an idea, but your injury propelled you. And what I have come to realize, it's what you struggle with that's is a lot of times attached to what you're supposed to do. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? And
yeah,
so the fact that you took that negative experience and you saw how that shaped really your hunger to pursue the very thing that you wanted to become, which is amazing to me. And how old are you? How old are you, Jamal?
yeah. I was gonna say, struggles are just things that overcome, obstacles to overcome. So that was like a great point that you mentioned. Me, man, it's so interesting to say too. I'm like on the other side of 30 now. I just
Yeah,
turned 31 recently.
yeah,
So I'm in my 30s, out of my 20s officially.
yeah.
Um, But yeah, it's good. It's good. I'm thankful for like another year and glad to still be here.
Yeah. And the reason why I had you say share your age is because you are a doctor at 31. Like that is something to be celebrated, especially being an African American male, and you knew what it is that you wanted to do. You pursued it, and you have done it as a millennial. And so I wanted to put your age out there, not to just put you out there, but to
Right.
show that it can be done. It can be
Yeah,
done.
definitely, definitely. It can be done, and if there's anybody out there who's watching or who's watching and knows somebody who's interested in kind of pursuing like that physical therapy path, feel free to definitely reach out to me for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why I have you on. And so to focus more on the Washington Wellness Podcast, what is that? Explain what that is, what services you provide, explain that platform.
Yeah, yeah. And so Washington Wellness is a podcast, and what's kind of unique about it, and kind of our like niche, is that it's all about the DMV area, right? So it's primarily for people in this area, and the people that we feature, they're all people who practice and work in this area.
Mm,
And for me, I really wanted to start it just because one of my kind of big, I guess, things that I enjoy about physical therapy is the patient education aspect. So that's where, you sit down with the patient, you kind of talk to them about something and kind of educate them on how they can make modifications to improve kind of their life. I was like, well, I could do patient education in the clinic, but I can kind of take this message and reach, more people. So having guests on the show with a podcast. And the
mm,
great thing about a podcast is that you don't have to kind of really stop what you're doing to kind of, sit down and listen to it. You can
yeah.
do it on the go. You can do it while you're running, while you're driving, any of those kind of things. So it's been good. So it's really just born out of a desire to kind of really help our community improve kind of the quality of their lives through health and wellness.
Okay, love it, love it. And so, with your podcast, are there opportunities for people to connect with your guests? Let's say if you have a physician on there and your listeners want to connect with that physician because they felt some type of connection or they were able to relate with them or things of that nature. Do you provide that as well?
Yeah, so usually, and I think I heard you correctly. Some of it kind of cut out a little bit. From what I understand, is about kind of connecting the listener to the featured guest.
Yes.
And so with that, yeah, that has happened on quite a few occasions. So I've had people tell me that, hey, I heard this podcast and that was exactly what I was looking for, and I was able to find this provider. I didn't know they were in the area. So that's been kind of, a reward to hear, for sure. And then I've heard from the other side as well. Like I've heard like a physician say, hey, I had a patient come in, they didn't know anything about us, but then they listened to your podcast and they said they, find us through there. So it's kind
Mm.
of going both ways, which is kind of, great. And that's, what I was looking for to get out of it. And hopefully that definitely continues to kind of just keep building and fostering these kind of relationships.
Nice. Yeah, and what I love about it is that you bring information that people might not know about to the forefront. And especially in our community with health, it is
Yeah,
very important for us to understand that you need good health to sustain life, you know? And a lot of times, if it's not convenient for us as a
right.
people, we won't pursue it. And so, how do you sit down, come up with the content, and use that as a draw for our people?
Yeah. And so I think I kind of just started looking at like the different domains of wellness. And, depending on who you ask, there's different categories where you can break it down into things like physical health, mental health, finances, several subcategories. And then I really just thought about, what's something that, people in this area kind of like, around our age, plus or minus 10 years would be interested in hearing. Um, and I really want to kind of, again, just kind of really connect people with these, future guests so that if they hear something that, they think is interesting and is, kind of what they're looking for, they can really just kind of get right to them. And so right now it's kind of just kind of whatever comes to mind essentially that fits in that category for that domain. The one I have coming out now is specific to this area and the fact that there's kind of a lot of substance abuse in this area, and so that's kind of going to be the topic of one coming out. So hopefully that can help someone kind of either beat their addiction or getting in touch with somebody who can help them kind of on that path.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I don't know of any platform that is addressing those issues, because that is a part of health and wellness. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it is a key part of it. And a lot of times we focus on certain things as it involves health and not other things. But really, you got to look at the total picture, especially dealing with an entire demographic. And so, who is your targeted audience, on your podcast?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was gonna say for sure, it's all about kind of millennials like around our age, again, plus or minus 10 years. And so it may be a millennial listener who hears something that kind of, speaks to them, but then they can take that back to maybe like an older adult if it's something that can help them, for example, or vice versa. So it's really kind of that target audience who can kind of take that message and either utilize it themselves or spread it to someone else. But I did want to kind of go back to what you just mentioned about kind of the different aspects of your health. And that's kind of how I look at it, from a physical therapy lens too. So if you think about, you come in with a problem, let's say it's, knee pain, that knee pain might not only just be, physical. It might not only just be your bone, your muscle, your tendon, your ligament. It might be from another domain, right? And so that's
Hmm.
it's important to kind of look at things like holistically a little bit. So you have to think about, are you sleeping well enough? Poor sleep quality can affect your pain. Are you, what's your diet like? If you eat certain things, that can increase inflammation in the body. And so that's why I kind of like to have these kind of like conversations, just to, educate the community.
Yeah, and since we're talking now that in that lane, I wasn't going to head this way, but how would
Oh, yeah.
you explain the importance of your spiritual and mental being, and how that coincides with your health? Talk about that for a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. So I think that's also a domain too. If you, let's say you have kind of that connection with a spiritual being, whether it's God or if you believe in something different, sometimes that can help as well in terms of just kind of having like an outlet. Something else I didn't talk about is like, stress. Stress can definitely affect how you feel, kind of your reaction to things. So just having kind of that outlet can make a difference for you for sure. And again, it's whether, you believe in kind of one religion or faith or another. I think, that is something that's important to have to be kind of that holistically and kind of whole person.
Yeah, yeah, and the Bible talks about your body is a temple. It's not just talking about the spiritual aspect. It's talking about literally your body. And so, if your body is the temple and this is the place where God dwells, you want to take care of it, just like we take care of the church. The
Hmm.
the brick and mortar building. We make sure the grass is cut. We make sure the lights are on. We make sure that the AC and the heat works and all of that good stuff. It is the same importance for us to do that with ourselves. God cannot use you in whatever field or whatever way that He wants to use you if self is not taken care of, and that's
Hmm.
mental and physical. Because you can
Yeah.
be spiritual all the way, but if your physical and mental is not together, the spirit cannot work within.
Yeah, 100%. If you're not, your best self, you really will have a tough time trying to help someone else. I think it was
Right.
one of my earlier podcast episodes. I want to say it was like episode 2, I believe. We were talking about mental health. And there was just this great, great quote from Courtney, who was the featured guest. And she said, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So if
Yeah.
your cup is empty, you can't really give much more of yourself to someone else. So that really kind of speaks to what you just said there.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can answer this, but I want to bring this to your attention. Mental health has become a real big thing now
Hmm.
in today's world. It is more in the upfront. You hear more about it. People are more open to discuss it. Why do you think that is so?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the times that we're in, man. It's, of course, during the time of this pandemic, which, has obviously just added on a whole nother level of stress to all of us. That's kind of like another concern that we, the majority of us have. Doing things to, minimize that risk of wearing masks, isolating yourself. All those sorts of things can have an impact on your mental health for sure. I
Mhm.
think, that, social media is great. I think, that, having this platform like we do now on Instagram Live is great. Podcasts are great. But also, if you're kind of looking into social media, you can possibly find, negative sources that may
Yeah.
kind of send you kind of like along a downward spiral. So on one hand, it's great, but also the other hand, it's kind of like a double-edged sword for some people. But yeah, I think it's really just kind of like a combination of the times we're in. And then, depending on your, political affiliation, and if thought the last administration, was doing well or poorly, and then now how things have flipped, that can have an impact on what you feel as well. The unrest with social injustice going throughout the country. There's a whole lot of reasons why that could be the case these days.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. We live in such a digital world, and so it has its pluses, but it also has its minuses. And I think a lot of times we try to compare, or we do it not even noticing that we're doing it on social media, or just in our own mind. When we're in our funk, we try to compare ourselves with other people, thinking that we should be further along, and whatever the case may be, and that causes stress within our own self, and then it leads to other health issues, which you talked about earlier. So I just wanted to bring that up because mental health is so important. If your mental ain't good, you cannot function the way you need to. And so I just wanted to hear your perspective on that. And so to just shift the conversation a little bit, what are some steps that you had to take to start a podcast? Because there could be folks on here who want to create a platform in the podcasting world. And so what were some steps that you had to take?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I kind of really got into it just by learning about podcast editing. So I kind of went through a kind of like digital kind of skills course where I learned how to do a few things, including podcast editing. But to set it up really, and it's fairly easy to do now. You can find a kind of website that will distribute the podcast for you to all the major players. So that's like Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Overcast, all those different groups. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that website again will kind of distribute it for you. And if you just upload it to that one website, then they will send it out for you from there. Then of course I created like a logo for the podcast. I had a good friend of mine who I knew from undergrad who kind of hooked me up with a pretty cool logo. And then just sitting down and recording. So it depends on what kind of software you want to use. You can use GarageBand, Audacity. Those are like the two big ones that I'm aware of. And then really just doing the editing. So taking the time to kind of edit the episodes. Depending on how long it is, you may be, and this could be me too, just because I'm still getting used to it. But for like an hour-long episode, you may spend twice as long, editing, just kind of make sure everything sounds right. But if that's not for you, you can. Yeah, I was gonna say if that's not for you, you could always, end up sending that out to someone else as well who could do it for you. But those are primarily the steps, and then just kind of reaching out to guests if you want to do that. And I found that most people are pretty receptive to being on the podcast.
Yeah. And how did you know that that's what you wanted to do? How did you know that you wanted a podcast platform? There's so many avenues that you could have taken. Why did podcast stand out to you the most?
Yeah, I think it's really again just because it's so easily digestible. It doesn't
Mhm.
take away from what you're currently doing. You can multitask with it. So again, whether you're working out, you're driving, you're on a walk, you're just cleaning your house, it's something that you can really just kind of take in. And I really kind of thought about that too with Audible, as far as taking books in that way too. So instead of having to read it, you can kind of listen to it and get it in that format as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I think is the bonus of a podcast is the accessibility of it, and a lot of people like to listen. You know what I'm saying? You have. I was talking to my team at the beginning of the year when we started for life. You have people who like to watch things. That's more like me,
Hmm.
and then people who like to listen. And then you, excuse me, have a in between crowd who likes to do both. Like a priest is a both. She likes podcasts and YouTube. You know what I'm saying? She likes to visually see it and to just hear things. And so, yeah, I think that it's super important. But there's one thing that you said that was so key is that you have to make sure that you have time for the editing. You know what I'm saying? It's one thing to record it. Recording is great, but editing takes time because you want it
Hmm.
precise, you want it clear, you want it clean, and you want people to really be able to receive what it is um, that you are saying. And so, for someone who might be on here that wants to get into that, what are some mics or things of that nature that you think are best to purchase?
Sorry, Walt, you kind of cut out like the second half there. Can you say it again for me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was saying, what kind of mics or technical things that you would suggest would be the best to purchase for a podcast?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And so first, just shout out Caprice. She's definitely a great supporter of the show. She's been there from day one, so I
Yeah,
really appreciate her. Um,
yeah.
as far as equipment, you really don't need much. So I learned how to do it or just on an iPhone, right? So you can record with your
Mm,
voice memo and then just kind of let that be it. So it's as simple as start from there. If you want to actually have this kind of like right in front of me, actually. So I have this mic that I got from Amazon. So kind of right here, not too expensive.
mhm.
It just kind of, you plug it into your laptop through the USB, and then you basically just talk into it for better quality. So that's something I've used. That's an investment I've made. But it really doesn't take much to get started. And I think that's one reason why, so many people are kind of getting into it, just because it is so easily accessible to do and to digest as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great information. I hope y'all taking notes because we got Dr. Jamal in the building. Okay, listen, I love your professionalism. I love professionalism. So we can go on to my next question. This is the
Hmm.
question that I want you to answer is how did you progress in such a woman-dominated area in the health industry with physical therapy? How did you do that?
All right, sorry, it kind
You
of
there,
froze my end
Jamal?
again. I caught half of it. Can you say it again for me? How did I progress in a woman-dominated
Yeah.
field, you said?
Yeah, I said, how did you progress in such a woman-dominated area in the health industry, which is physical therapy? How did you progress through that?
Oh yeah, yeah. And so I guess it's interesting. So actually the first physical therapist was a woman, and then yeah, ever since then, the profession's been kind of primarily woman based. And so I didn't even think about that really, because being in this area, I was exposed to both men and women who were physical therapists. And so it really wasn't like a detractor for me. I kind of knew I wanted to do it, so I just kind of went through it. Um, but I feel like I had like a lot of great help along the way too. So I would not, want to say like I did it all by myself. There were actually like a lot of women who helped me and get to where I am. So definitely, my mom, my sister, my aunts. I had a great mentor from my church, Dr. Juanita Archer. She is just amazing. She, allowed me to come over to her house and do, prep interviews and things like that. So I really had all these different people kind of pour into me, including women. And so I felt, it's something I wanted to go for, and I just decided to, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, you cut off a little bit on the end, but I think I got it. Were there any obstacles that you said you had to face being, you know, a male in this health field, in this portion of the health field?
No, I wouldn't say there were obstacles, but I would say, like you did mention, it is predominantly, women in the field. But then if you kind of look at that, kind of subsection, as like you see Sharon mentioned in the chat, as far as about, having Black people in the profession, right? And
Yeah.
so this isn't the case today. It's a little bit better, I think. But from a few years ago, there's like a statistic. I think like only 4% of the professional physical therapy are, Black people, right? And then out of that 4%, only 1% are Black males. So I'm sure it's like a little bit better now. But again, that was like around 2016. Um, so yeah, just to be a part of that 1%, it's interesting to say that. But being in the DMV, you really don't kind of notice that as much because
Yeah.
in this area, you can find, Black physical therapists, male, female, kind of, sprinkled throughout the area. But if we went somewhere like, further out in the country, that may not necessarily be the case.
So would you say because of where you live, your patients are more in a place to receive you than if you were elsewhere?
Yeah, yeah, I think that definitely is like an extra kind of layer, right? So part of being like a healthcare provider is having people feel, like comfortable to talk to you, tell you their problem, kind of express what's going on. And then, no one comes out. Well, actually, a few patients have said it that, hey, I'm proud to, be working with a Black physical therapist, a Black male physical therapist. But I think it comes across in, subtle ways too. They may not say it, directly, but it may be just gestures they'll make or kind of things they'll say in terms of how they kind of describe what's going on, how you can relate. And there's a lot to it too in terms of just having that belief in your provider. So if you believe
Mhm.
in your healthcare provider, that can help you kind of along your path of recovery. Again, going back to the mental aspect that we talked about earlier. And so just having somebody you can relate to, little side jokes here and there, I think definitely can make a difference in your, recovery.
Yeah, yeah, and one thing that you said, it's definitely your character and it's how personable you are. I know for me, if I cannot connect with my doctor, my barber, my anyone who's providing the service for me, if I don't connect with you, it is very hard for me to receive you. And so,
Yeah,
whoever is watching and you're thinking about going into the health field, you have to treat your patients almost like your clients. You know what I'm saying? You have to realize that you're serving them, but you have to also show them that you care about their well-being. And I think
right.
that is really important, that you care not just that I'm here, but that you care about me as a person. And so, how do you go about that as a physical therapist? How do you take time to understand and learn who your patients are?
Yeah, man, and that's a like a perfect like segue. I was just thinking as we were talking, that really starts with the very first visit, right? And so in physical therapy, there's a concept we talk about called a therapeutic alliance. And so you want to build that therapeutic alliance with your patient from day one, from the day of the initial evaluation. And ways I
Mm,
do that, I kind of give you my full attention. I'm not, just listening to you. I'm actively listening. I'm taking mental notes. If you say something here, I can bring that up later. And then I really let the patient kind of talk and express themselves. A lot of times, you go to different places, whether it's, like a different kind of provider, you're not with that patient, sorry, you're not with that provider for, an extended period of time. Usually when you see a physical therapist, your evaluation with them is around like an hour compared to, maybe like, a 5, 10 minute visit with another provider in a different kind of sector, right? So just having that
mm,
extra time to connect during that first day really matters. Again, active listening, and then really just giving the patient the time to express themselves. And it's interesting too. So if you do that as a healthcare provider, as a physical therapist, like 9 times out of 10, the patient will tell you what's wrong with them, like what's going on.
mm.
Not only just what they think, but what is actually the problem. And then it's up to you, the provider, to take that active listening skill, kind of filter what's kind of primary information, secondary information, and then kind of use that to inform your test. So if the patient tells me one thing, like, okay, I'm already thinking in my head in the examination, I'm going to do these certain tests to try to arrive at this outcome, versus just using every single book. So it's really about that listening component.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I would also like for you to just explain physical therapy and what it is that you do, because I think sometimes, we hear the word and, we might have an
Yeah.
idea, but we don't fully understand what is physical therapy and why is it important. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So depending on who you ask, you ask some patients, they may make a joke that I've heard before that physical therapy is pain and torture. They may say that, physical therapist, PT stands for physical terrorist. I've heard that one too.
What?
But really, yeah, physical terrorist, they mean it in good fun. But really, to me, physical therapy is just really a vehicle to help you achieve what you want to in life, right? Um, if you think about it, everything we do in the world will require some sort of movement. You wake up in the morning, you got to get out of bed. You got to walk down
Yeah.
those steps. You got to, walk to where you're going, drive comfortably, play sports, do recreations. So movement really is the center of how we kind of live and everything we do. And of course, I said that, as a PT, but I really do think it's true. And so with
Yeah.
that, in order to achieve that, we use movement as the tool. And so we'll look at things including like your range of motion, your strength, your balance, your stability, your walking, all those things again during like an initial evaluation, and kind of use that to kind of help guide you back to where you want to be. And for everyone, it's so interesting. So you can have like the post-operative patient who just had a surgery who just wants to be able to walk again or use their arm again, all the way up to like the high-level athlete who's looking to get back into sports. So, for example, I've had one guy recently who just had like an ankle issue, just wanted to be able to kind of go up and downstairs again. But then on the other side, I have somebody who's an ultra marathon runner. Have you heard of ultra marathon running?
No. What is that?
Ultra marathon. So it's basically running like a marathon and then some. And so it's called ultra, like based on the distance. So for example, this guy
Mm.
said he's, fine. He has no issues, running 50 miles on a race. But it's when he gets to mile 51 out of 100, that's when his ankle starts to bother him. So you can have, yeah, 51 out of 100. So you can have like, the whole spectrum of patients and what they're looking to get out of it. But again, movement can help people achieve kind of what they want to. And, it's not always that it has to be 100% perfect, the way it was before. For some people, that is the goal, or it can just be just as simple as just doing something you can enjoy in a modified way.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you explaining that helps people to understand why it's important. So just to give a little story of mine, when I first started dating Caprice Green, we would walk and she would look at me and she would say, "Why do you walk like that?" And I'm just like, what do you mean? I don't know. This is how I walk. Hey, my posture was awful. That's what she said. She said, "Your posture is bad." I'm just like, this is just how I walk. And she was just like, see, this is why physical therapy is important because people don't even know that they're sitting wrong, they're walking wrong, and things
Yeah.
of that nature. And she talked about how your foot
Yeah.
should be when you're walking. And so it is so many levels, and she's going to kill me, after this, but there's so many levels of physical therapy that only I know about it because of her. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, just going back to kind of what you had mentioned there earlier, that it's not necessarily that, there's kind of like a wrong way of doing things per se. Like to me, and again, it depends on who you ask, depends on physical therapist, but the body is made to move in, all kinds of different ways. And so there's not a bad movement per se, but it's more
Yeah.
so to me usually like things that you sustain and you repeat. So things you're doing over and over again, and maybe positions you're holding for too long. If you're doing that, consistently more than something else, then that can kind of negatively, impact you. But yeah, it's all about to me, variability of movement.
Yeah, and that's what I have learned with being with her, is it's how you move and how often you move. You know what I'm saying, and making sure that your posture is so important, and I learned that from her as well. But how would you? Let me see how I can formulate this question. What are some advice or some knowledge that you can share on how to just properly move your body and to make sure that you can prevent injuries?
Yeah, yeah. And so I think really just kind of, piggybacking off what we kind of mentioned there, the variability is huge. So if you're somebody who, finds yourself, mentioned posture, just slouching, kind of, like forward head, kind of slouched shoulders, bent over at the hips and lower back consistently, that's okay to do. It's not a bad movement. But the bad thing is if you do it consistently for too long over and over and over again. So just think about, if you see yourself in a certain position, maybe you try to do the opposite. Um, so that's one thing there. Also, there's general kind of recommendations as far as movement goes, right? So I think it's the American College of Sports Medicine, I believe, has put out some guidelines. They're saying on average you want to move about like 30 minutes a day. Actually, I think that's the old guideline. I think recently they just came out and said 75. They've upped it based on how health is going in America. Overall, not great. Um, so yeah, at least 75 minutes of movement a day, aerobic exercise activity, working on your cardiovascular endurance, things of that sort. But then also, that's good, but I'm also a proponent of resistance training. And so that doesn't mean you have to be, in the gym, throwing down. Yeah, you don't have to be lifting 500 pounds, but, just starting where you can, because we're finding now through like research and through literature that using resistance training can make a difference and can provide positive outcomes in terms of how you live your life. It helps you do things. So in terms of resistance training, you're building strength, you're building endurance, you're building tolerance to the different stresses of life. And so usually, the stronger you are, the more you can handle. And there's a saying out there, it's interesting. I think someone I might be paraphrasing, but it's, the stronger you are, the harder you are to kill, something like that. But it's just showing that,
Mm,
that can help you kind of live life and do things longer that you want to do. So for example, you could be in your 80s, climbing mountains. There's people out there who do that. Um, but it's all about kind of what you do throughout your life, kind of, leading up to that point.
yeah, yeah. And to ask another question, um, it's a two-part, but they're both asking the same thing. So, what is your advice for those who sit down all day and type, and they might have back problems and things of that nature? And then the same question for
Yep.
those who stay all day. They might be a hairstylist, they might be a barber, a teacher, or whatever the case may be. They're on their feet all day long. So, what is your advice to prevent back pain or anything of that nature.
Yeah, and for both situations, the answer is really just variability. It's variability of movement. And so if you're, sitting, you have a desk job, computer job where type all day, can you stand up? Possibly have like that sit to stand desk that helps you do that. Or maybe just kind of, remove yourself from the seated position and kind of get up and, move around a little bit, take a walk, come back to your work, take a break. Same thing for that person who stands all day. Are you able to sit? It's not a terrible thing to do. Do you have a stool you can pull up and just kind of, relax for a bit? Can you, sit in a chair as you do your work? Again, it's just changing that activity. If you're, standing for a prolonged period of time and, maybe sitting isn't feasible or you can't, do that too long based on the nature of your work, maybe looking at kind of your footwear, having, more supportive shoes can help as well, the surface you're standing on. That's a consideration. But truthfully, it's all about the variability of the movement. And I see Sharon said in the chat here, let's see, the rule of sitting for too long, what should people know? So Sharon, the rule that I tell my patients is that, and this is based on advice from Cornell University, is that for every like 30 minutes of work that you do, you only want to sit for 20 minutes, and then for that remaining 10 minutes, you want to kind of stand for 8 minutes, and then with the remaining time, 2 minutes, you just want to walk around, move a little bit. So maybe just walk down the hall, take a break, come back to your work. But that's kind of how you break it up on the 30-minute average. So 20 minutes of sitting, 8 minutes of standing, and then 2 minutes of walking around. Of course, that's general. It may be more, a little bit less for someone else, but that's something you can kind of base your time off of.
Yeah, and I think that that's important because especially with a lot of us working at home, not us, because I'm not, but a lot of people work at home, and so they're sitting a lot. You're sitting on the couch, then you go over to your computer chair, then you do that. Then once you leave there, you're going back into the living room, or you're sitting at the dining room table. And so we did a lot of sitting during the pandemic, and then now that we're becoming mobile again, people are starting to feel something here, this hurts here, and it all attests to them not moving correctly in their mobility. And so that's why I ask those questions, because it's real. It's very
Yeah,
real.
for sure. I think like a lot, especially earlier on in the pandemic too, when everyone was working from home for the most part. I think just in physical therapy offices across the country, we really saw people coming in just from things for because they weren't moving like they were before. So people would say, yeah, I used to be active and I used to go to the gym, but the gym's closed down. I stopped moving as much. I started working from home. I started sitting more for longer periods of time. I didn't have like a proper work station or desk set up at home, so I'm just using my kitchen table. My kids are doing school from home, so I'm having to kind of sit in awkward chairs, bend over, help them, all that kind of stuff. So I think that really kind of played a role in terms of a lot of what we saw in clinics like across the country.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And even working in the school system, so many of my kids have gained so much weight because they weren't active, and so now that they're back in PE and things of that nature, oh, Miss Washington, my leg hurt, or Miss Washington, my back hurt, or oh, Miss Washington, I can't catch my breath. And it's amazing, even their little bodies have had, some sort of effect because of being at home for almost 2 years. And so I can only imagine, what comes through you all's door now, post pandemic.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a challenge. Yeah, for sure. I was gonna say, it's not again that just sitting at home for forever, that can impact some things, but it's just that the body getting used to kind of moving again, those same kind of
Mm.
stresses you used to place on it, it can handle it. The body is resilient. You just have to kind of build back up to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so my next to last question for you
Oh
is
yeah, sure.
how um, a patient of yours, or what is that process like?
Sorry, say one more time. A patient.
Yeah, I was asking how can a person become a patient of yours?
Oh yeah, for sure. So primarily I work with a company called Movement X. That's where you can come and kind of see me for physical therapy. That website is just movement kind of hyphen x.com. And if you look under locations for this area, you'll see my profile there. You just hit the button that says request care with Jamal, and then that'll shoot me a message, and then we can kind of just connect and discuss and try to figure out what you have going on if we're a good fit for each other. Um, And so, yeah, I mean, it's been a great platform. I do with Movement X concierge physical therapy or mobile physical therapy, meaning that I kind of come to you, the patient. And so it's not a traditional clinic. I kind of work with patients in their home. I kind of, meet them at the gym. I've even had sessions with, patients outdoors. It's been great and kind of really refreshing for sure to do physical therapy in this way. And I've also got to meet kind of, their family members and kind of get to know them a little bit too. So it's been a very, very enjoyable experience.
That's awesome. That's so out of the box. So out of the box. And I love anything out of the box. So that's amazing. And then my last question for you is what piece of advice would you give to someone who wants to build a career in physical therapy or in the podcast world? What would be your advice for them? Oh man. Hold on, y'all. Jamal might be having a little technical difficulties on his end. Oh, he's out. So hopefully he comes back. I hope that y'all are enjoying this. I know I'm learning a lot about taking care of these bodies that God has gifted us with as it relates to physical health. And so hopefully he comes back. Hopefully he comes back. Y'all stay with us for a little bit. Hopefully he comes back. So the name of his podcast is Washington Wellness. That's the name of his podcast. I think he's back. It's called Wash Well Pod. Here he is. He's back. And I'm going to make sure he gives all of that right before he gets out of here. All right, you're back.
Yeah, Walter, man, I don't know what happened there.
I don't know either. I have no idea. But did you, excuse me, did you catch my last question?
I didn't. I heard you started, and then things kind of got a little interesting.
Okay, so my last question to you is what is one piece of advice that you would give someone who is interested in becoming a physical therapist or someone who is interested in starting a podcast?
Oh yeah, so if you're interested in becoming a PT, definitely do your research. Physical therapy is a great career, but it's all, like most careers, all about what you make out of it. You have to look into, different resources for how to get into school, prerequisites you have to take, that sort of thing. And again, I can assist with that. If anybody, want to listen to that and they're, curious about it, feel free to shoot me a message. And then for the podcast, I mean, just do it. I think sometimes we kind of get in our own way a little bit, right? Like, is this going to be good? Are people going to like this? Are people going to follow and download and subscribe and everything like that? But if you feel like you have a message and it's something important that you really want to put out there and you think will benefit people, I say just 100% go for it. There's no time like the present, and then you'll be glad you did for sure.
Well said. Just like Nike, just do it. Just do it.
Just do it.
And oh man, that for forever. It is just, excuse me, allowing your faith to override your fear. Just do it. Just do it. And that's with both, becoming a physical therapist or starting a podcast. It is relieving the doubts and going after the thing that you believe that God has put in your heart to do. And so that's a perfect way to close this right here, Dr. Jamal. I'm so grateful and honored that you said yes and to provide such a plethora of information as it relates to our physical health and then also providing information on podcasts. So if you can, once again, tell folks about the name of your podcast and also the umbrella of which you work for as a physical therapist. We having some problems. That ain't nobody but the enemy is who that is. Oh, come on. Wasn't it though, Sharon? It was very informative. Yeah. Oh man, I don't know what's going on his end, but um, once again, we will have all of his information underneath the post of this video, and then we will also have it on YouTube as well. Oh, he's coming back. Hold on, let me jump in. This is not happening the whole time we've been doing this. Somebody need this tonight. All right, sir, you're
All
back.
right. Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, man. I don't know what's going on with the connection, but I think I heard the last part. So, podcast is called Washington Wellness. So if you just Google Washington Wellness Podcast, it should come up.
Oh man, I don't know why this thing is doing this today for Dr. Jamal. I like calling him Dr. Jamal. I know he'd be like, I don't need that, but I believe in giving accolades when you have received them. Um, But anyway, we will have his Instagram handle for his podcast. You can follow him there, and then you can get his website. And like he said, he is very receptive of any request or questions or any type of information that you would like to receive from him. He is very open, and his turnaround time is quite impeccable. So reach out to him, support him. That is a black brother that is killing the game. He is in the field that he is supposed to be in, and he is killing it. And so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up tonight because he has a few technical difficulties. But I thank y'all for joining us. I hope that you really got some information tonight and take heed of it. Don't just hear the information and not receive it and apply it, because in that we're doing all of this in vain. But take what you heard on tonight and utilize it. And if you are a person who wants to go into the medical field, or you are a person who wants to start a podcast, in the words of Jamal and Nike, just do it. Go for it and do it. And so thank y'all for joining us. Next week is our last week. I can't believe 6 weeks have almost gone by already. Last week we are with Chef Swank. I'm telling you, that is going to be dope. If you love Zaneta Fox last week, you're going to love Chef Swank because that's her son. And so I hope that y'all will join us next week. Continue to share this. Give us your comments, your feedback. Your feedback means the world to us. Encouragement is always good. We always need it to let us know that we are truly making an impact and encouraging you. So thank y'all so much for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Jamal, for being here on tonight. And so I hope to see y'all next week. And like I said, after this live is over, we'll have it posted on our Instagram platform and on our YouTube platform. All right. So tell your friends and your family and all of them. Love you all so much. Thank you, Sharon, for your comment. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will see y'all next week. Y'all have a blessed one.